Hey, it's Charlie from Simple Machines, and today we're going to talk about HubSpot data trust and specifically how to quickly assess data quality in terms of readiness for AI. So there's a lot more companies, including clients of ours, are leveraging more AI, especially within HubSpot. It becomes especially important to really look at the quality and trustworthiness of your data because those problems really magnify once you're using them for AI. Not only that, for pipeline forecasting and for more advanced automation. So today we're not going to go in depth on our full data trust audit, but we'll walk through our methodology as it relates to the data trust snapshot to see how we're kind of giving clients a quick assessment of to what degree they can trust their data. And the way that we frame this is when we kick off with clients, really want to understand what are the top 3 to 5 things that they absolutely need to be able to trust in HubSpot. And usually this is some combination of executive reporting, AI forecasting, and automation. But in this case, so we're doing just demo data here. So let's say we have a client and the top 3 things they need are be able to trust reports, be able to use HubSpot for automation, and to be able to leverage it for AI and for forecasting. So in this case, we're starting with an executive summary here. And what we really want to come out of the gates is your data trust risk low, medium, or high? And we're going to get into how we go about and assess this. So in this case, what we're seeing here is that the data trust risk is high, and we break down really what are the top trust breakers. So this is going to vary between clients. In this example demo run through, let's say what we found is there's a lot of top of funnel invisibility. So pre-meetings, we're just not seeing things get logged. Let's say the sales team is using a lot of default values for the deal amounts. So rather than putting a best guess and updating it, they're just using $500 and that's flowing through to close won or close lost. Maybe this client relies on partnerships and there's just no real consistent referral attribution to show what revenue is coming from partners. And there's no really consistent change log to account for how things change over time within HubSpot, whether it's property changes, lifecycle changes, object changes in the ecosystem. And then going back to those top 3 things, then how does this impact reporting, automation, AI, and forecasting? So in this case, what we would have reviewed here would be objects and stages within HubSpot, the entry points. So where is data getting in? What workflows are being used, because this is going to show you how data is changing over time and if it's following rules that make sense. We would have evaluated reports to understand how accurate those are and how much those line up with forecasting and ICP that needs to come through. But there's always some process interviews just to understand how people are using the system, and then a look at what kind of change log or documentation exists to account for any drift that's happening in the portal. So in this case, with the demo, what we do then is we break down where the top 5 breakpoints where trust is really falling off. So again, I won't retread too much ground here, but in this case, we would dig in more to what is happening. Why is that pre-meeting pipeline dark in this case? Well, it's because deals aren't really getting logged until those meetings are scheduled. But there's more early stage activity that needs to be accounted for if you want an accurate forecast, and so on down through the list. Then what we do is we really look at drilling down into where data is coming into the system. So those entry points, and more granularly, how trustworthy or what kind of risk are we seeing with those top entry points? And again, each client is going to look different here, but this is somewhat similar to what we would tend to see where, they're coming through things like meetings links, Outlook extension, some amount of manual entry, whether that's one-offs and imports. And then in this case, let's say there's a lot of imports coming through Apollo. And in this case, we see that Apollo is really coming with some questionable data in terms of how it's tagged and how well it fits. So that would be our top risk. Moving on to process enforcement, then we would look at, okay, once data's in HubSpot, how is it being used? And can we trust that process to be both enforced and solid enough that the data is going to be trustworthy? So back to our demo here, we're going to break down the riskiest processes, and these are ones that are more manual, human ones that are prone to error or to just not getting logged at all, like calls, emails, moving deals in a timely manner. Big one that we see a lot is just naming conventions. Seems like a minor thing, but when they don't get used regularly, it creates uncertainty and confusion around what is what. And if you're trying to use AI to analyze or activate campaigns based on unclear names, that's going to be a real problem. Things like capturing relevant contact information, and then again, documenting system changes, recording how things are handed off. These are very common things. And the more human involvement and the less those things are documented, the higher risk there tends to be. So then with each of those, we're not only highlighting where the risks are, but then recommending the controls so that we're taking the guesswork out of this as much as possible. We're automating wherever we can, and we're just really systematizing this. But the process enforcement, this is a big one, especially with bigger sales teams. It is a real challenge for sales leaders, revenue leaders to not only document and share what their process expectations are for the sales team, but to actually track how is that process being followed? Is it being followed? Where is it being followed? Where is it falling off? So we use a tool called Supered. We're a Supered accredited partner. And this actually, and what you do is you embed this right into HubSpot so that you can see, for example, here, how many violations are occurring over time against that process, what specific rules are not being followed, and seeing that over time and by sales rep. So this really takes the guesswork out of, okay, is our process being followed? And then back to reporting. So how confident are we that leadership can really trust these reports for data-driven decisions? So in this case, pipeline forecast trust would be low because of what we talked about. There's just not a lot of visibility, especially in the top of funnel. We really can't trust the partner referral source pipeline because it's just not being tracked back to those referrers. And then specifically with Apollo, there's a lot of context coming in, and it's really not clear how well all those are aligned with our ICP. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. Presumably they would be, but we're missing specific properties and segments that really tell us where they fit in this case. So what we'll typically do at this point is we'll lay out sort of a roadmap. So what are the near term, next 1 to 2 week things that we can do to essentially stop the bleeding? These are things that are just going to help based on what we flagged in the snapshot. So in this case, replacing the default values, putting in some required referral source fields, just documenting naming conventions and so on. Then there's sort of the next phase. Okay, over the next 30 days, once the bleeding has been stopped, how do we really further stabilize this? So these would be more process things that are both documented and set up in the system. It's going to take more work. And usually having a partner help kind of plan how to implement, track, and enforce this over time is going to be crucial. And then in this case, so we do recommend doing a full assessment based on just the sort of number of trust breakers that we're seeing. It's not one or two things, it's multiple. So we would lay out what would those things be over time that we would want to get into with the full assessment. And we do have a system here to really get into, once the snapshot is complete, do we see a full data trust assessment being warranted or not? So if it's a few things that can be fixed relatively simply, then we wouldn't recommend it. But if there's more structural risk based on varying dimensions, this could be more than a couple things, and those reports really can't be trusted, and there needs to be more digging into what the root causes are, then that full data trust assessment becomes necessary. This is the criteria that we use in more depth to decide whether that trust assessment's warranted. And then with every data trust snapshot, we provide the appendix of what did we look at. Again, this is not the full assessment. This is the snapshot. This lettering back up to those top 3 to 5 must-have KPIs or data points that the leadership needs to rely on. So that's a look at how we're doing our quick data trust snapshots as it relates to data quality and AI readiness. There's more to it, but we'd love to answer more questions or talk to anybody who is interested in learning about this process more. Thanks for watching.